If you'd told me a few years ago that I'd marry a man my parents called the plumber, I would have laughed. Not because of him, but because I used to believe love alone could make my family proud of me. Turns out I never really knew what love was until the day they cut me off completely. My name's Clara Reed, I'm 32 years old, and I grew up in the kind of world people envy from the outside. My parents, Douglas and Margaret Reed, owned one of the biggest real estate firms in Connecticut, which meant our life looked perfect. Glass wine cellars, charity galas, and vacations where even the sunset seemed staged. Inside those walls, though, everything was a performance, and love had a dress code. My younger sister, Lena, was the family's golden girl. She had the soft voice, the effortless grace, the kind of beauty that looked good in country club newsletters. Me? I was the one with ink-stained fingers and a book always half open under the table. At every dinner party, my mother would say things like, "Clara, sit like Lena does," or "Watch how she talks to people." That's how you make connections. I tried. God, I tried. But nothing I did ever seemed enough. Straight-A report cards barely earned a distracted good work from my dad. When Lena scraped by with B's, they took her shopping to celebrate. For my 16th birthday, I got a card and $50. When Lena turned 16, she got a convertible with a bow on top. Mom said, "She's social, sweetheart. She needs to be able to see her friends." I learned early that approval in our house was a luxury item, beautiful, rare, and always out of reach. So I stopped chasing it. By the time I finished college on scholarships and weekend jobs, I'd already made peace with the idea that my worth wouldn't come from them. I built my own life in Hartford. Small apartment, mid-level job in financial consulting, friends who actually listened when I spoke. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every dish, every piece of furniture was something I'd earned. And for the first time, I felt free. Until one rainy Tuesday evening when my ceiling started crying. A pipe burst in my bathroom while I was brushing my teeth. Water gushed everywhere, soaking the rugs and creeping into the hallway. I panicked, grabbed my phone, and called the emergency number on the lease. The dispatcher promised someone would arrive within the hour. 50 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, the hallway light caught on the raindrops clinging to his jacket. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, with warm brown eyes and a voice that carried calm even through the chaos. "Hey, I'm Evan Miller," he said, lifting a heavy tool bag. "You've got yourself a bit of a waterfall situation, huh?" Despite the disaster, I actually laughed. Evan got to work immediately, efficient, focused, gentle with everything he touched. While he tightened pipes and shut off valves, he started talking. Not small talk, the kind that fills silence, but real conversation. He asked what I did, and when I said I worked in finance, he didn't look bored or lost. Instead, he asked smart questions about market cycles and business ethics. Somehow, that led to books, and I found out he was reading the same biography I'd just finished. When he finally fixed the pipe 3 hours later, I didn't want him to leave. He handed me his card and smiled. "Call me if anything leaks again, or, if you just want to keep arguing about 19th century economists." That night, his card sat on my counter while I brushed my hair, and I couldn't stop smiling. Our first coffee turned into a 4-hour conversation. After that, weekends disappeared into easy rituals, farmers markets, walks along the river, dinners cooked side by side in my tiny kitchen. Evan wasn't polished like the men I grew up around. He didn't talk in bullet points or name-drop executives. He was grounded, thoughtful, funny in quiet ways that made my chest ache. By spring, I was in love. That's when I decided to introduce him to my parents. I should have known better. Dinner at the Reeds' mansion felt like walking into a board meeting I hadn't prepared for. My father's handshake was stiff, my mother's smile thin and rehearsed. When I said Evan owned his own plumbing company, the air changed. Small, subtle, but sharp. "How interesting," Mom said, setting her wine down with precision. "And how did you two meet?" I told her about the burst pipe. Her eyes flicked toward my father in a silent exchange. Throughout the meal, they barely spoke to Evan, instead steering conversation toward Lena's new boyfriend. Patrick, a trust fund heir with an MBA from Columbia. Evan stayed composed, polite, even when my father cut him off mid-sentence. In the car afterward, I apologized again and again. They were so rude, Evan. I'm sorry. He reached for my hand and said softly, "Don't ever apologize for someone else's arrogance. You don't owe them that." The next morning, Mom called. Her tone was sugary, the kind she used when serving bad news. "Sweetheart, we just worry about your future." "A plumber? What kind of life can he give you?" "Mom, he owns his business. He's smart, kind, and makes me happy." A sigh. "You've always been stubborn, Clara." Dad's call came later. "You'll come to your senses," he said. "This isn't a match that reflects our family." After that, every visit was the same pattern: snide remarks, icy smiles, and questions designed to humiliate. Evan never took the bait. He answered politely, complimented the house, and kept his dignity intact. 6 months later, they invited us to the family lake house for a weekend. Against my instincts, I went. The first night, my mother accidentally said only 5 places for 6 people. My father spent dinner talking about investment portfolios as if Evan didn't exist. Lena and Patrick compared Paris boutiques like it was an Olympic sport. Afterward, Evan and I walked along the water under a quiet moon. I broke first. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words trembling out. "I don't know why they can't see you the way I do." He looked at me, eyes steady. "They see exactly what they want to see," he said. "It's got nothing to do with who I am." There was something else in his voice, something I couldn't name. "What do you mean?" I asked. He smiled faintly, as if weighing how much truth to share. "I'll show you when we're back in the city," he said. Something tells me it might change everything. I didn't know it then. But that single promise, softly spoken under a silver moon, was the first crack in the world my parents built, and the beginning of everything that came after. Evan wasn't the kind of man who bragged. So when he said he had something to show me, I didn't expect much. Maybe some blueprints for his company or an old family photo. I definitely wasn't expecting what he revealed. A week later, I went to his apartment for dinner. He lived in a modest brick building in West Hartford, the kind of place that felt sturdy and warm, like him. Inside, everything was neat, functional, and somehow peaceful. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, but not just novels. Engineering journals, design manuals, even philosophy. While he cooked, I wandered, running my fingers along the spines. That's when I saw the sketches spread across his desk, intricate, precise designs for something I didn't recognize. "Evan, what are these?" I asked. He glanced over, wiping his hands on a towel. "Those? That's what I wanted to tell you about." We sat, 2 glasses of wine between us, and he exhaled slowly. "I haven't been entirely open with you, not because I wanted to lie, but because I wanted you to know me for me first." My stomach twisted. "Okay. I didn't start out as a plumber," he said. "I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT. I worked for a defense contractor for 6 years. The money was good, the title impressive, but I hated every second of it. My work was going into systems I couldn't even talk about, projects that felt wrong." I blinked, speechless. "When my dad got sick," he continued, "I took a leave to help him with his plumbing business, fixing things that actually mattered, people's homes, their water, their comfort. It grounded me. When he got better, I never went back." He smiled faintly. "I guess you could say I traded defense systems for water pipes." I stared at him. "So you're an engineer with an MIT degree who decided to run a plumbing company?" "Sort of," he said. "But that's not the whole story." He handed me a folder filled with patent documents and technical blueprints. "I've been developing this, a smart water conservation system for homes. It reduces usage by over 50% without changing daily habits. It's already in testing, and I just secured a patent." I flipped through the pages, stunned. "Evan, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell me?" He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Because I wanted you to fall for the guy fixing your sink, not the guy with the degree or the project. I needed to know it was real. My eyes stung. It is real. He smiled, relief softening his features. Good, because there's one more thing. The following weekend, he took me back to the Riverside Park where we'd had one of our first dates. The trees were just starting to bloom. He stopped under a willow tree, turned to me, and knelt down on one knee. "Clara Reed," he said, voice trembling just slightly. "You saw me before anyone else did. You saw the man, not the resume. I want to build my life with you, the way we build everything else. Honestly, I have," I said. "He makes me happy." Her sigh cut through the line. "Well, it's your decision. Your father and I just want what's best for you." Then, without pause, she added, "Oh, by the way, Lena got engaged too. Patrick proposed in Aspen last weekend. Isn't that wonderful?" I stared at the phone. My engagement was an inconvenience. Lena's was a headline. Within weeks, my parents threw her a lavish engagement party at the country club. Hundreds of guests, champagne towers, a string quartet. My mother wore pearls. Photographers flashed. When I asked if they were planning anything similar for me, she smiled tightly. "Sweetheart, we thought you'd prefer something small." Given Evan's situation. That was how they described the man I loved. Still, I tried to stay optimistic. Maybe they'd come around before the wedding. They didn't. Our small ceremony was set for August at Riverside Gardens, a quiet botanical park by the river. When I called to confirm my parents' attendance, Dad sighed like I'd interrupted something important. "The 12th? We have a charity gala that evening. The ceremony's at 4, I said quickly. You could still make both. He promised to check the calendar. He never called back. The night before the wedding, I called one last time, my heart still foolishly hopeful. "Mom, are you sure you and Dad can't make it?" "Oh, Clara," she said, voice dripping with false regret. "Your father has an important investor meeting. We just can't miss it." Then came the line that would burn itself into me forever. "Enjoy marrying your plumber, sweetheart. We won't be embarrassed with you." The call ended. I stood there in my wedding dress, phone still in my hand, tears burning hot on my cheeks. My best friend Naomi tried to comfort me. "They don't deserve you," she whispered. "You're marrying the right person, not the right image." A knock sounded on the door. "Clara, you okay?" Evan's voice. Tradition said the groom shouldn't see the bride before the ceremony, but I didn't care. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside, handsome in his navy suit, concern written across his face. What happened? "They're not coming," I said, barely holding it together. "They said they're embarrassed." Evan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. He knelt in front of me just like he had the day he proposed. "Look at me," he said softly. "Your parents made their choice and it's their loss. Today isn't about them. It's about us. Do you still want to marry me?" "Yes," I whispered. "More than anything." "Then let's do this," he said, smiling. "Let's build something they'll never understand. Something real." As he left to take his place, my Uncle David, my father's brother, came in. "Your dad called," he said quietly. "Told me they weren't coming. I told him he was making the biggest mistake of his life. So, would you do me the honor of letting me walk you down the aisle?" Tears welled again, but this time they were from gratitude. The ceremony was simple and perfect. The late summer sun filtered through the trees, and when I reached Evan, his eyes were already shining. We spoke our vows through smiles and tears, surrounded by people who loved us for who we were. At the reception, laughter replaced judgment. Evan's parents, sweet, grounded people from Rhode Island, hugged me like family. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. That night, after the music faded and the last guests left, I sent my parents a photo from the wedding. Evan was standing beside a banner that read, "Congratulations, Evan Miller, CEO, AquaLogic Systems." No caption. Just the photo. Then I turned off my phone and walked hand in hand with my husband toward the life we chose together. Our honeymoon wasn't extravagant, just a quiet cabin on the edge of Lake Champlain, surrounded by tall pines and the sound of loons echoing across the water. For 3 days, it felt like the world had shrunk to just us, a small fire, and the rhythm of peace I'd never known before. On the third afternoon, as I was reading on the porch, Evan came outside, his phone still in his hand and a wild, boyish grin on his face. "It's official," he said, sitting beside me. "Vertex Capital's in. They're investing $5 million into AquaLogic." I blinked. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Full-scale production starts this fall." I threw my arms around him, laughing through tears. "I'm so proud of you," he kissed my forehead. "I couldn't have done it without you, Clara. You believed in me before anyone else did." That evening, we toasted with cheap champagne, watching the sun dip below the water. I didn't know that while we were celebrating, the Boston Business Journal had just published an article titled, "MIT Engineer Secures Major Funding for Revolutionary Water System." By the time I turned my phone back on the next morning, it had practically exploded. 27 missed calls. 15 unread texts, all from my parents. "Clara, call us immediately. Why didn't you tell us about Evan's background? We need to talk. It's important." The scandal destroyed Patrick's reputation, and with it, my parents' pristine image. Investigations uncovered that their company had unknowingly invested in his fraudulent ventures. They lost business partners, property, and pride. For the first time, they were living without applause. A year after my wedding, they asked to visit. When they arrived, they looked smaller, older, human. My father's voice shook when he spoke. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, "about what really matters. The people we thought were our friends disappeared the moment we needed them. But you took Lena in when we wouldn't have blamed you for turning her away." My mother wiped her eyes. "We were wrong, Clara. About Evan. About love. About everything. I believed them. Not because their words were perfect, but because, for once, they were real." We rebuilt slowly. Not as the family we used to be, but as something new. They started therapy, downsized their company, and began working on affordable housing projects. Lena found her strength again, starting a nonprofit that helps women rebuild financially after toxic relationships. And us? Evan's company became a national leader in sustainable water systems. Together, we founded a scholarship at MIT for students from blue-collar families who dream of engineering careers, named after Evan's late father, who taught him that every kind of work has dignity. When I look back now, I see it clearly. What felt like rejection was really freedom. My parents' absence forced me to build a life on my own terms, to choose love over appearances, character over class. The night before our daughter was born, Evan and I sat on our porch watching the rain. He took my hand and whispered, "Remember when that broken pipe changed everything?" I laughed softly. Best flood I ever had. If you've ever been judged for who you love, or felt small under someone else's definition of success, remember this. You are not measured by their standards. You are defined by your heart, your choices, and the courage to live your truth, no matter who turns away. Because sometimes losing their approval is the very thing that lets you finally find yourself.